Okay, so fasting. You want the lowdown on how it might help with, well, weight loss mainly. And maybe there's even something to it for type 2 diabetes, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a buzz around it these days. It seems like everyone's talking about fasting.
Totally. But we're all about separating the hype from, what actually works. So we're diving deep into the complete guide to fasting, see if it lives up to the hype.
Good plan. It's a fascinating read. Really challenges a lot of those, shall we say, conventional ideas about health and weight loss we hear all the time.
Well, like eat less, move more. Easier said than done, am I right?
You got it.
But before we even get to that, what about those myths floating around about fasting? I feel like they scare a lot of people off before they even give it a shot.
Absolutely. Let's bust some myths.
Hit me with the first one.
All right, metabolism myth, the big one. People think fasting just like slams the brakes on your metabolism, puts it in starvation mode, and then you just can't lose weight.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I used to think that too.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But it's not really true. Dr. Fung points to some studies that show short-term fasting can actually, but this, increase your resting energy expenditure.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It's because of this spike in norepinephrine, a hormone that basically revs up your metabolism.
So instead of slowing down, our bodies actually kick it up a notch. That's wild.
It's more about your body adapting, switching fuel sources, right? Like instead of constantly relying on the food you just ate, it starts tapping into those stored fat reserves.
It's like finally using that emergency fund, huh?
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the whole muscle loss thing? I hear that one a lot. People are afraid they'll lose all their hard-earned muscle if they fast.
Oh, yeah, that's another big one. And yeah, it makes sense why people worry about that. But the research is pretty clear. Our bodies are smarter than we give them credit for. During a fast, your body wants to burn that stored fat for fuel, and it actually tries to protect your muscles as much as possible.
Wow. So our body knows that muscle is important and tries to hang on to it.
It's true. There's actually a study mentioned in the book where participants did alternate day fasting, like every other day for 70 days, and guess what? They didn't lose any muscle mass at all.
70 days. That's amazing. Okay, so we've tackled metabolism and muscle loss. What's the last myth we're busting today?
Let's talk about blood sugar. This is a big one. Lots of people worry that fasting is going to make their blood sugar just like plummet, that they'll be lightheaded, faint, you name it.
Right. That's scary, especially if you're thinking about fasting to try to manage your blood sugar in the first place.
It seems counterintuitive, but our bodies are amazing at keeping blood sugar stable, even without food. And it all comes back to hormones.
Hormones. Okay, let's talk hormones. People hear hormones and think it's some big mystery, but they're so important.
Absolutely. And when it comes to fasting, the star of the show is insulin.
Okay, so insulin. Remind me again exactly what insulin does. I paid attention in biology, I swear.
Think of it like this. Insulin is like the traffic cop of your metabolism. So when you eat, especially carbs, your blood sugar spikes, right? And that signals your pancreas to release insulin. Then, insulin's job is to shuttle that glucose, the sugar, from your blood into your cells for energy.
Oh, okay. That's the basics, right? But how does this tie into fasting?
Well, here's the cool part. When you fast and your blood sugar starts to drop, your body doesn't just panic. It's got this backup plan. And, yep, you guessed it, hormones are involved.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Definitely a theme. So when insulin levels drop during a fast, this other hormone, glucagon, steps in.
Glucagon.
Yeah, glucagon. It does kind of the opposite of insulin. Tells your liver to release stored glucose into your bloodstream to keep those energy levels steady.
So it's like this perfectly timed dance between insulin and glucagon.
Exactly. And get this, there's more. Remember how we were talking about your body being smart and knowing how to use different sources of energy? Well, during a fast, your liver can actually make glucose from other stuff like amino acids from protein or glycerol, which comes from fat breakdown.
Wait, so our bodies make their own glucose? What's that called again?
Gluconeogenesis.
Gluconeogenesis. Okay, that's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful, but it basically means our livers are way more resourceful than we think.
I like it. Resourceful livers. So we've got our resourceful livers, our hormonal dance going on. It's all starting to make sense. But I have to ask, how does this all connect back to weight loss? I mean, we always hear it's all about calories in versus calories out, right?
Right, that's the classic thinking. But it turns out it might not be that simple. It's not just how much you eat. It's also about those hormonal signals, remember?
Okay, yeah, that's what we were just talking about with insulin and all that.
Exactly. And Dr. Fung, he really dives into this in the book. He talks about why those classic eat less, move more strategies, They often don't work.
Ugh, tell me about it. I've tried that whole eat less, move more thing so many times. It's like an uphill battle, and I swear I always end up right back where I started.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone there. And the book, it actually breaks down a few reasons why that happens. So first, consistently restricting calories, it can lead to, you know, intense cravings.
Oh, for sure.
And that hangry feeling nobody likes.
The worst.
Plus, remember, insulin's whole job is to signal your body to store fat, right?
Yeah.
So when you drop your calories way down, especially if you're still eating lots of carbs, your body might hold on to fat because insulin's still hanging around.
So even though I'm like white-knuckling it, eating less, my body's still in storage mode because of those insulin spikes.
It's a tricky thing. And then there's the whole issue of what's called metabolic adaptation. Basically, when you're constantly in that calorie deficit, your body starts looking for ways to, like, conserve energy.
Makes sense, I guess. Our bodies just want to be efficient.
It's a survival mechanism. Think about it. Our ancestors, they didn't always have a fridge full of food.
Right.
They needed to be able to survive on less.
True. But not so helpful when you're trying to lose a few pounds.
Right. There's actually this really interesting study Dr. Fung talks about, the Women's Health Initiative study. They took almost 50,000 women, put them on this low-fat, low-calorie diet, and told them to exercise more.
Okay, so like classic eat less, move more. What happened?
Well, they stuck with it for 7.5 years.
7, wow.
7.5 years. And at the end, there was almost no difference in weight loss between the diet group and the control group.
Seriously? Are you kidding me?
Nope. Pretty wild, right?
That is wild. So much for conventional wisdom. Are there other examples like that?
Oh, yeah. Like, think about the show, The Biggest Loser.
Oh, yeah.
Those contestants, they lost a ton of weight, right? But, and this is the sad part, most of them gained it back.
I always wondered what happened after the camera stopped rolling.
Well, turns out their metabolisms, they had slowed down so much that they had to eat way less than the average person just to maintain that weight loss.
That's so sad.
It's heartbreaking, really. And a perfect example of how eat less, move more can backfire.
Okay, so if eat less, move more isn't the answer, what is? Where does fasting come in?
Well, fasting, it's a whole different approach. Instead of fighting your body, you're working with it, with its natural rhythms and all.
Okay, I like the sound of that already.
It's not about deprivation. It's more like giving your body a break from digesting all the time, which lets your hormones, especially insulin, reset and find their balance again.
Like hitting the reset button.
Exactly.
Right.
And when those insulin levels go down, it's like unlocking that freezer door we talked about.
Yeah.
The one with all your stored fat. So your body can finally tap into those reserves for energy.
This is making so much more sense. It's not just about how much willpower I have. It's about creating the right environment, the right hormonal environment for my body to actually let go of that fat.
You got it.
Okay, that's huge. So we're talking about addressing the root cause, not just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms.
Now you're getting it.
Which actually leads me to my next question. Type 2 diabetes. I know that's something you're really interested in.
Definitely. It's incredible what fasting can do.
So for someone with type 2 diabetes, walk me through it. How does fasting actually help manage those blood sugar levels?
Okay, so at its core, type 2 diabetes is all about insulin resistance. The body's making insulin, but the cells, they're not responding to it like they should, and that leads to high blood sugar.
Like that traffic cop we were talking about before. He's trying to direct traffic, but nobody's listening.
Perfect analogy. And what's amazing is that fasting can actually improve that insulin sensitivity, meaning your cells start paying attention to the traffic cop again.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about managing diabetes. It's about potentially, like, reversing it.
Exactly. And this isn't even a new idea. Dr. Fung talks about how fasting has been used to treat diabetes for over 100 years. Like even before we knew what insulin was.
Wow, seriously. That's amazing.
There's this fascinating story in the book about this doctor, Frederick Madison Allen, back in the early 1900s. He developed this starvation treatment for diabetes, basically severely restricting food, especially carbs.
Wow. That's intense.
It was, but it actually worked. His patients' blood sugar levels improved drastically.
So this isn't some new fad diet. It's more like rediscovering something we kind of forgot about.
It's like going back to our roots. And there's more. During World War II, when food was scarce and rationing was happening everywhere, there was this huge drop in diabetes mortality rates.
So they were basically fasting by necessity, and it had a positive effect.
Exactly. Our bodies have this incredible ability to adapt and heal. We just have to create the right conditions for it to happen.
That is so cool. Okay, so I have to ask, are there different ways to fast? Because it can't be one size fits all, right? So many ways to fast. It's kind of overwhelming. Where do you even start?
You're not wrong. It can feel like a lot, all the different options out there, but honestly, that's actually a good thing. It means there's probably a way to make it work for you. Dr. Fung, he goes through a bunch of methods in the book.
Okay, good to know. Well, let's hear about some of them. What are people trying these days?
Intermittent fasting is super popular, and that one's less about like what you're eating and more about when you cycle between eating and fasting, see?
Oh yeah, intermittent fasting. I feel like I hear about that one everywhere, but what does it actually look like? Are there like different ways to do it?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. It's flexible. The 16/8 method, that's a big one. Basically, you fast for 16 hours a day and then eat all your meals within an 8-hour window.
So you're basically just extending that natural fast we do overnight, right?
Yep. A lot of people just skip breakfast or push it back a bit. Makes it pretty easy. There's also alternate day fasting, where you just fast every other day. And then there's the 5.2 diet. You eat normally for 5 days and then restrict calories, like down to 500 or 600 on 2 non-consecutive days.
Wow, so many options. And that's just intermittent fasting. What about some of the other types?
Well, you've got your traditional water fast. Pretty self-explanatory, just water for a set period.
Sounds intense. What about juice fasting? That feels a little more approachable.
Yeah, juice fasting can be good if you want something a little more restricted, but you're still getting some nutrients from the fruits and veggies.
Makes sense. Okay, last one. I've always been curious about this one fat fasting. Doesn't it seem counterintuitive, though? Like, you're fasting, but you're eating fat.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Seems kind of backwards. But basically, you go super low carb, super low protein, and get almost all your calories from healthy fats. Things like avocado, coconut oil, MCT oil.
Okay, and what's the logic there?
It's supposed to keep you feeling fuller for longer, kickstart that fat burning. Like, it's almost like you trick your body into thinking it's fasting, even though you're still taking something in.
Tricking your body. I like it. Isn't bulletproof coffee like part of that whole fat fasting thing?
Exactly. That's a big one. Okay, so we've got all these methods. How do you choose?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. How do I know what's right for me?
It's all about finding what works for you, your body, your lifestyle. Talk to your doctor, talk to a registered dietitian, do your research. Don't just jump into something without thinking it through, right?
Always good advice.
And remember, it's not about punishing yourself. It's about listening to your body. If something feels totally wrong, don't force it. Start slow, make adjustments, find that sweet spot where it feels sustainable for you. No judgment.
Working with your body, not against it. I like it.
Exactly. Fasting can be a really powerful tool, but it's not about quick fixes. It's about tapping into something deeper, something that can really transform your relationship with food and your health for the long haul.
This has been eye-opening for sure. Thanks for breaking it all down. As we were talking about all this, something Dr. Fung said in the book really resonated with me. He talks about how ancient cultures, they didn't just see fasting as like a diet thing, right? It was more holistic.
Yeah.
Like a way to find mental and spiritual clarity too.
It's true. It's fascinating how much history there is around fasting, right? And how different cultures have used it throughout time.
Absolutely. And while this deep dive was mostly about the science of fasting, it definitely makes you think, doesn't it? Maybe there's more to explore there.
Definitely something to ponder.
I love that. Well, on that note, we'll leave our listeners with that thought-provoking question. Keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.